next song is perhaps new to some of you. A friend of mine, Jim Manley, who lives like across the street from my mom, has written this song. And it's a song that, this is the chorus. I want to teach you the chorus. I'll sing the lyrics to the verses, but it's really easy, simple little chorus.
Yes, it's an earworm that you're going to walk away
It goes like this. Take off your shoes. You're standing on my holy ground. Take off your shoes. You're standing on my holy ground. Well, the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, from the waters beneath to the heavens above. So take off your shoes. You're standing on my holy ground. You're standing on my holy ground. Now that's really simple. Try it now with me. You ready? Let's get that sort of little lilty beat. Take off your shoes. You're standing on my holy ground. I said, take off your shoes. You're standing on my holy ground. Well, the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, from the waters beneath to the heavens above. So take off your shoes. You're standing on my holy ground. You're standing on my holy ground. On the 8th day of creation, well, the Lord looked around at the power plants and freeways and the trash on the ground. Plantations growing rubber where the grain should be high. You couldn't see the sun for all the smog in the sky. Well, kids, you really filled the earth and then you subdued it. There's nothing in my book that says you got to pollute it. So take off your shoes. You're standing on my holy ground. Sing it loud. Take off your shoes. You're standing on my holy ground. The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, from the waters beneath to the heavens above. So take off your shoes. You're standing on my holy ground. You're standing on my holy ground. You've heated up my rivers with your plants and your mills. You're killing off my oceans with your waste and your spills. You're fishing like there'll always be an endless supply. You're fighting one another for what's left to divide. You didn't want advice when I first gave you dominion. Or maybe now it's time you got a second opinion. So take off your shoes. You're standing on my holy ground. I said take off your shoes. You're standing on my holy ground. The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, from the waters beneath to the heavens above. So take off your shoes. You're standing on my holy ground. You're standing on my holy ground. I dig your scientific minds, but use them with care. You're breaking down my ozone layer up in the air. You're hyper farming turtles of the soil of the stone. And some are eating meat, but some don't even get bones. I told you to be fruitful and you sure multiplied. But the rich took all the land and never learned to divide. So take off your shoes. You're standing on my holy ground. Say take off your shoes. You're standing on my holy ground. Well, the earth is the Lord and the fullness thereof, from the waters beneath to the heavens above. So take off your shoes. You're standing on my holy ground.
A lot of you, okay. So can we just do a quick sense of names so I can see where everybody is and who you are? And I've heard them before, but I can hear them again.
My name's Alec.
Nora. Mike. Randall. It's for other people too, right? Martha. Andrew. Go here. Yep. Kim. Jenny. Amy. Linda.
Lisa?
Narda. With your hair long. It's nice. I grew mine too. Accurate? Yeah. Lisa. Glenn. I know you guys from Synod. Say again? Chelsea. Bill. Jerry. Galen. Anne. Chris. Okay. Name. Name. Eric. And Dale. Terry and Dale. Okay. Well, thank you all for being here. And when Fa asked me to do this, we had a kind of combined conversation. She said, well, I want you to do that thing you did with the David Brooks article. And I said, okay, that's pretty easy. How many of you have read the David Brooks article? Just the excerpts that were sent out? Okay. All right, that's actually good. And then she said, but I also want us to talk about civil discourse, or how we talk to people who are different than we are. I was like, oh, okay. So we'll figure out how to do that, all right? Somehow we're going to figure out how to do that. So I think I want to start just by asking this question. What is the ethos? And there's various answers to this. What is the ethos you experience in the United States right now? So not specific issues like immigration or whatever, but what is the ethos? What's the sense of society that you experience right now?
Polarization.
Okay, so polarization is one, absolutely. Complacency, okay, good.
Distrust.
Fear,
Sadness.
sadness,
Us and them.
us and them.
Uncertainty. I would say judgment.
Judgment,
Disrespect.
Anxiety.
Anger.
okay, I got uncertainty, disrespect, anger, anxiety, right?
Lawlessness.
Lawlessness. I'm going to give you an example in a minute. Okay, what else? We got a lot there. That pretty much sums it up, right? How many of you are planning to watch the presidential debate? Reluctantly, but still planning to do it. Interesting. Okay. So David Brooks's perspective is that all of these things are indeed happening, and he believes in large part because many of our moral structures have broken down, okay? And that there has been there's two ways of looking at it, either a rise in selfishness or, more likely, a loss of the things that kept selfishness in check. And that leads to people being more focused on themselves and wanting to do what they want to do when they want to do it. Okay? Now, I've noticed this just in the past, actually since before the pandemic just started. I don't know if any of you drive Route 30 very much, you probably do, or 283. But there's been an increase in the number of these particular types of motorcycles that have the fat wheels, and you don't know they're coming until they're right next to you, and they're very loud, very suddenly. I don't know, have any of you ever been?
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Usually between you and the car next to you.
Yes, like coming between you, right? Yeah. That's new. That didn't happen 20 years ago. Okay. Yesterday, when I was coming back home from the office, I was on 283, and was it yesterday or was it today? I don't even remember. But I was in the right-hand lane. It was today, yeah. I was in the right-hand lane, and there were cars in the left-hand lane, and so I put my signal on to move into the left lane because there was space before the next car. I started to move into the left lane. The guy who was in that space came up around me on the shoulder on the left and then came into the lane and literally pushed me into the right-hand lane. That was really frightening. I've never had anyone do that, ever. And my first thought was, didn't he know that he could have just killed everybody that's in this little clutch of cars here? But what's the answer to that? Didn't care. Didn't care. Okay. So there's been this lawlessness, rise in lawlessness, but more overt, right? There's this guy in, is it in Florida, where he's been driving this noisy car. I don't know if you've seen this on the national news. And the people have complained about it for years. And finally, they think they've got him. And he posts on Facebook, he's got his own account about the noisy car, drives around, tries to irritate his neighbors. But it's the noise ordinances haven't been updated and so forth, and he does it just to push their buttons and trigger them, and yeah. So some of this is social media, right? Some of it's social media. Some of these self-oriented things. The loss of moral frameworks, rules of decorum, to use an old-fashioned term, rules of decorum, and the decline in civic institutions, where many of us learned these things. Where did you learn how to be a decent person? Everywhere. Church, school, family, Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts. What was that, Bill?
I just gave the scouts one.
Oh, okay. Camp. Okay. Church, school, family, camp. What's that? Youth events.
Paddle. Helped me a little while. Paddle.
Oh,
We had the switch. I had the switch.
yeah. Something we don't talk about now because that's
That's right.
very much out of fashion. Okay? So these are the places where we learned. So moral formation, this is the way David Brooks talks about it. Moral formation has been declining in the United States. And moral formation usually means three different things that are happening. And think about this in terms of the church in particular. Helping people learn to restrain their selfishness, right? Helping people to restrain their selfishness. How do we keep our egotism in check? How do we do that? Usually by an authority figure, right? An authority figure and our peers to some extent. Second, teaching basic social and ethical skills. We learn what that means. We learn that there's a moral standard, so to speak. It's not always overt learning. It's not like somebody sits there and says, these are the moral rules. Oftentimes it's covert, right? You're learning it and you're not even aware that you're learning it. You're not even aware. If somebody said to you when you were 21, why is what that guy did wrong? Who told you that it was wrong? You might think, who did tell me that that was wrong? Well, maybe it was church, maybe it was my parents. We are learning these things by osmosis, a lot of it. We are just taking in. How do we disagree with somebody constructively? Is there anywhere that anybody learns that now? Now, I'm curious. I really want to know. Like, where? Where? It's supposed to be happening in schools. I pray it happens in schools because I don't know where else it's happening. I know it's not happening in any churches that I know. I'll say that with grief. In part because so many of the church people are fighting with each other, right? And then the third is helping people find a purpose in life. And usually that purpose in life is something greater than themselves. I was meeting with somebody yesterday who's at the tail end of the World War II generation. When you say tail end of the World War II generation, and he said, you know, I keep getting asked to do things. And I said, well, that's because you will respond when you're asked. And he said, well, yeah, but I'm getting old and I'm tired. And I said, yeah, but you're still competent, so you're going to be asked. And he said, and I was raised at a time when volunteerism is what you did. You gave back. Like, that's the whole idea, is that in your life you've received these things and you give back. And I said, absolutely. And that's an ethic that we don't have as much anymore. And when you look at the decline of mainline Protestantism, it's not just mainline, but think about our traditions, the decline of mainline Protestantism. We don't have that, and we don't have our youth in that like we used to, okay? So those are the three things, that moral formation we don't have in the same way as we used to. Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, we have seen Boy Scout and Girl Scout camps sold all over the place. Not to mention church camps. We know about that and the loss that's there. One place that is a moral training ground still is team sports. And that's a hope. That is a hope. That at least in many of, and I saw this with girls, young college women in particular, who were in team sports. Not only did it help their sense of themselves, they weren't as hateful about themselves, which, thank God. But they had much more sense of what's it like to be part of a team. How do you give way to another person? You can't be super selfish if you're part of a team. It just doesn't work. So that is a place where there's some hope. Somebody said to me the other day, they said, I'll tell you where kids are learning morals, soccer. And he was kind of half serious, but I said, you know what, you're right. That is where a lot of that is being learned, thankfully. And we have a lot more kids playing sports, so that is good. Now, one of the things that Brooks says, which I find very interesting, one, he does end up talking about narcissism, an increase in narcissism, different kinds of narcissism, and so forth. None of that is surprising. I'm sure you've heard about that. But he puts forth the idea that politics has become a place of moral formation. Because if people have no other touchstone for moral formation, that there are political tribes that you can tap into very easily, and you certainly can find them on the internet, and become part of a tribe where you really feel you belong. And their words become your words, and their vocabulary becomes your vocabulary. And it's very easy to do. And when I was watching, purely from a sociological point of view, which I try very hard to do because otherwise I get very upset, when I was listening to some of the campus demonstrations this spring, some of them, I looked at some of the students at some of these schools, and I thought, okay, they're all saying exactly the same thing. Exactly the same thing. So that is, they're part of a tribe that has a moral stance on something, right? However, the stance that they have is not connected to their lived reality. In other words, they are not going over to fight. They are not, okay? They are not risking anything. Now, David Brooks calls that a luxury opinion, which I've been struggling with. I've been thinking a lot about. And I realized that, yeah, I kind of do that too. I'll say something because you know what? It doesn't cost me anything to say it. But if politics, and I mean right and left, because man, there's extremism on both ends. If politics becomes a place of moral formation now, and if we're becoming more polarized into those two camps, then how are we going to get out of those two camps? Politics is influencing everything. This is what David Brooks is saying, is that red and blue shows up everywhere now. Okay, so here's an example of that. I've been working with a church. I'm not going to tell you which one, but I've been working with a church. And they're divided. So one side of the divide says, I don't understand why we have to follow our bylaws. This happens more than you might think. I don't understand why we have to follow our bylaws. Who's going to ever know? Well, we will. We'll know. Well, can't we just decide as a group and do it? No, actually, that's, on this decision, that's illegal. Well, you know what? I don't trust the state of Pennsylvania anyway. So what difference does it make? If I don't trust government, why should I pay any attention to our bylaws? Okay. That sets up a particular argument that is very hard to argue against. Well, you're only saying that because you've bought into all that liberal crap. You know what I'm telling you? They're pulling the wool over your eyes. I'll tell you right now. All that bylaw stuff, that's how they keep you controlled. If this were a real church, free like they say we're supposed to be, free in Jesus, we wouldn't have any bylaws. We'd be making decisions to do what's right for God. That is a persuasive argument. Now, some of you have horrified looks on your faces. But to some people, that is persuasive. And it's very difficult to speak to that, which I'm going to do in like 3 weeks. So you can pray for me. So when we start thinking about having difficult conversations or how we speak to people who are in a different location than we are on a political issue or a social issue, we have to think about a couple of different things. The first thing that we have to think about, I believe, and this is not particularly sexy or interesting or anything to many people, but the first thing we have to think about is what Martin Luther King thought about. And that is, where am I in this? Where am I, and how do I respond to another person who disagrees vehemently with me? Now, King spent a lot of time working with his young people. They spent hours practicing nonviolent resistance, practicing while someone walked among them while they sat on the floor and screamed at them all the things they were going to hear on the street, so that they could recognize their own triggers and not be reactive. They practiced that. Oh, that's a spiritual practice. That is a spiritual practice. But what's interesting is that in our protest culture these days, there isn't much of that going on. What happens is we go directly to reactivity, right? In fact, Sister Joan Chittister, is that right? Yeah, I think I pronounced that correctly. She was speaking to another one of our conferences in the area, and she was explaining how when she goes to a protest and there's a line of protesters who are on the opposite side of where she is, that she goes up to them and she will introduce herself to someone, and she will speak to them and hear where they're coming from, and she'll ask questions and so forth. And you know, there was a woman on the Zoom call, this was on a Zoom call, and there was a woman on the Zoom call who said, okay, wait, this isn't working for me. I mean, I don't know why that's what you're doing, and you think that works. What's going on here is so wrong. You need to voice it loud and clear. You need to tell them what's wrong with their position. And she was really upset. And Sister Joan said, you know, the reason I do this is because after I leave that protest, I go back to my community of sisters and we pray and talk through everything that's happened. And then we pray more so that I can go up and talk to people. It requires spiritual practice behind it. The other thing, it was absolutely fascinating because you had these two versions of how we respond to the world's issues right now. One is an engagement, a leaning in, and the other is a reaction against. And on this side, and I get it, the person was saying, all I can do is protest this. All I can do is say no in the face of it. Whereas Joan was saying, I want to hear what they say. I want to try to connect with that person. And this person was saying no, because whatever the particular topic was, just no, you can't go there. It's wrong. So this presents a dilemma to us as Christians about how we engage with others who disagree or who are espousing something that we really disagree with. So when it comes to engaging with somebody who thinks differently than we do, there are a couple of things that have to be in place. We have to be ready and willing to engage. we have to be prepared to engage. Which is why when we do these intentional conversations at a church, for example, they have to be set up in advance. It's done very intentionally. It's not just, oh, come together and let's have a conversation about race. That doesn't work. That does not work. But it has to be intentional, because the people who are coming in have to be prepared, know in advance what's going to happen, how it's going to happen, how it's going to work. And the better we know our triggers, the better we can step back from them in order to be able to engage. And we have to be able to do that to take part in difficult conversations. And that's true even within family. There are often certain family members who just can't, I can't do it. I can't talk to you. And that's okay. But we got to know it instead of diving in and being constantly reactive all the time. Because our reactivity, and that's part of our culture right now, that's part of the ethos, is the reactivity is insane. That's what that guy was doing when he pushed me back in my lane. The reactivity is everywhere, which is part of the reason why our anxiety is high. Because reactivity is cortisol, right into your system, gets you going. You could start feeling your heart. It's like when you're walking down the street and you hear a couple people arguing up ahead, so you start to feel that going, right? The reactivity is all around us. And maintaining a sense of calm and presence in the face of that is really tough. That takes practice. That's something we have to practice to do this. So that's one of the things that we have to do if we're going to engage, if we're going to engage with someone else. And where are we seeing some of those differences? Give me an example from church. Where do you see people in church? And this church is largely of a similar mind, right? At least politically, I'm going to guess that it's largely of a similar mind. So where do you see people disagreeing or where they might come up against each other in this community? Money. Good. Okay. What else? Money cuts across everything. It really does. What's that? Morals.
Yeah, whether to post the 10 Commandments somewhere or not. But that's political.
That's actually a really good point. Why would we have a problem posting the 10 Commandments in a church? Okay, but would we have a problem posting it in the church? Well, there's some hesitation. It's like, well, what does it say if we post it in the church about elsewhere? Okay, so it becomes politicized even in a church, right? So perhaps morals, well, actually, morals is one. Moral disagreements in churches are completely quiet because we don't talk about them, right? So there was a church I worked with in Indiana that had a polyamorous couple. So there was a man with 2 women, and they were a committed threesome, all right? Well, there were people in the church who were like, just couldn't even greet them on Sunday morning because it was so foreign to how they thought about things. And some of them were surprised that they had such a reaction. They didn't even realize that they had such strong feelings about monogamy. So that's a moral thing that is often hidden, that we don't know about because we don't talk about many of those things openly. If you were a Puritan, you would have, but we don't. Okay, so we got money, we got morals perhaps. Is there anything else? What's that? Okay, so politics, if you got talking, so look at this seat that was just, that just changed hands in New York. So you had two Democrats running against each other, right? One's a progressive, one's a classic liberal. Both Democrats, very different, right? And that is how the Democrats are starting to split a bit between progressives, what I call true progressives, and then classic liberals. Israel, Palestine. Yes.
The political thing too, it's something we don't discuss in church. I mean, you know who your like-minded people are, and those who are not. But social media is a good thing, and sometimes it is just a cesspool. But, and it's like the same person that, you sit next to and you pray and you do all of this, then their other views are so totally different than what their Monday persona is so different than their Sunday persona, and we don't discuss that. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does make sense. It's very real. That's very real. Galen?
I think sometimes in churches, there's a sense of interpersonal relationship issues. Like sometimes there are cliques that get formed, and sometimes there's gossip cliques run around.
Oh, cliques, okay.
Cliques.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes that forms. Sometimes there are people that are working the parking lot after the meeting.
Sure.
And those kind of create those kinds of dissension. There's triangulation sometimes.
Sometimes.
Those interpersonal relationships, I think the way that, especially in the larger church, you have potential for more of those. So that's some things that we wrestle with.
Yeah, so those parking lot things, which often have to do with power,
That's right.
which often has to do with identity, not as much about power exactly. So what are some of these underlying things that these have to do with when something happens? Well, I'm going to give you an example from a church in this association. In this church, there was a painting in a location like where this banner is, okay? The sanctuary is nowhere near this big, it's much smaller. But there was a painting that had been there for a very long time. Now, the church was not air conditioned. And they decided, look, we're growing, we got to do something about this. So they went for some of those wall units. You've probably seen them. They're rather narrow, but they go in like that, right? So they put 3 in. Well, you put one in there, and it required taking down the painting. So they took down the painting. Yeah. Okay. So you all laugh because you know, right? Now, someone was deeply offended by the fact that the painting came down. So there's a group of people in the church who are saying, let's figure out what happened here. Well, there's 3 pieces to this. And some of this will make sense as we think about what happens in our own churches and conversations that we may be having with people. What happened is first. Okay, so what happened? That the painting was removed. That's just the basic facts. What happened? The painting was removed. What are the feelings involved? Offense, sadness, if we can even get that far, anger, maybe a sense of rejection, if she was somehow related to the person who either painted it or gave it, right? There's something else in here that's happening. I mean, what's behind the anger? What's behind the offense in something like this?
Adversity to
Change.
Disrespect. Could be disrespect.
Could be disrespect. could be perceived as disrespect, certainly.
I wasn't consulted.
I wasn't consulted. Okay, so what does I wasn't consulted mean underneath?
A person wants,
I wasn't important. I'm not important.
My voice isn't heard.
I'm not important, which is even deeper. And why is it important that I know that I'm important? I grew up here. I have a lot of different identities in my life. We all do. We all have a lot of different identities. For this person, part of her identity is I'm a member of this church. I grew up in this church. That's a key piece of identity. And so if the key piece of identity is threatened, then it's I'm not important. I think about my mother back when she could see, and she would say, I don't like going to church with your father. Randall laughs because he can just hear her saying it. And I say, why? And she said, they sing these hymns I don't know. And I say, yeah, I know that's happening in a lot of churches now, so why don't you like that? You know, some of them have great tunes. And she said, well, it just feels like what I like isn't okay anymore. It's dismissal. It's probably not disrespect as much as it is, you're old. You don't matter, right? So when we look at what's behind some of the stuff that goes on in church discussions, get down to some of those identity things. Because the pastor of this church where this happened was like, I can't believe this. I can't believe they're fighting about this painting. And I'm like, look, I know you used to be a businessman, so I totally get it. But we got to think about some of the feelings that are really deep here, that are going on. And think about this. So once we got to start talking about the identity and who this person was and how she was connected to church, some of the same things are at play when you have parking lot conversations. How so? How do you think that works? Like if, let's say you have a council meeting, give me an example, Galen. You have a council meeting and there's disagreement about what? Money?
Putting in an elevator.
Okay, putting in an elevator. That's a really good one. Okay, there's disagreement about putting in an elevator. What are the disagreements about? Like, apparently a group wants to and one doesn't, right? Cost? It's a money issue.
Who really needs it? It's a need issue. Some people don't need it, so. We never had it before.
We never had it before. Do the people who say that need it?
No, not yet.
Not yet. Not yet they don't.
Yeah.
We never needed it before. So it's change. It's modernization.
Well, it's connected to the deeper sense of inclusivity,
Of course.
accessibility. And
Yes.
some folks, the argument is that we're not using our ability now anyway. We don't foresee the use of that in the future, which is a disagreeing point. I mean,
We're not using our what now?
our top floor, but,
Okay.
so,
But it's part of the church's philosophy of welcome and inclusion. And A2A. Okay. So what's this A2A thing? I'm not asking that. I'm just play acting. What's this A2A thing? Why is that important to us?
it fits in with our covenant of agreement with a sense of open and affirming, which is a wide berth sense of inclusivity. It's not just a focal point of one community, but all kinds of folks that may have difficulty getting to places where we do ministry.
Well, we got lots of different kinds of people here and lots of room to do our ministries, so why do we need an elevator? Okay, how is that threatening to me as a church person? Depends on your age. So how can you think, what would be the reason that an elevator would be threatening to me in some way?
There'll be people coming that I don't know. You're gonna expect me to pay money to make this happen.
Okay, why is paying money a problem?
They don't have.
Everything's about money.
Why is that a problem, though? Is it church's money? It's the church's money.
No. The donations that we would make.
It's donations.
We have a solid endowment fund, and there's a fear that we will use that to excess, and we wouldn't be able to fund our regular operating budget.
Okay, so there's kind of a rainy day fear.
I think that's later, there's part of it, there's another pieces too.
So some of it may be personality, right? Just simple personality difference, okay? It also may be change, modernization, people I don't know. Elevators are a real problem. They cause a lot of tension, so that means that there's more than just the cost of it. There's more going on there than just the cost of it.
Sometimes I sense a lack of faith about that kind of moving forward.
Lack of faith, what do you mean?
Lack of faith that we can make it happen. A lack of faith that it's a good direction to move into. And that, isn't that what being here and being part of a church and being part of God's people is about? Faith. Moving forward when we're not sure. Moving forward when we don't believe that things are all clear and fancy and perfect. I feel that
Scary.
intensely.
Okay, and there's a basic personality, when we look at the big five personality structures, that are inborn, they're largely genetically determined. There's one in particular that comes into play here, and that is those, and you can see it in babies, those who seek novelty and those who don't. So those who seek novelty tend to be much more adventurous. They're going to reach out, they want to touch things, they want to step away from their parent earlier than others do. They are interested in looking forward and moving in a forward direction. You're probably one of those novelty-seeking babies, okay? It's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. But there are many people who are the safety-seeking babies. Because what's one of the things that people feel about church? It's a place where I feel safe. Safe, comfortable, accepting, especially if I've been here a long time, right? So there's different understandings of what a faith community is, right? I mean, you have a movement-oriented, faith-oriented, you have a pretty clear sense of what that is. But there are those who say, church is about a place where I feel safe in my relationship with God, my relationship with each other, right? Isn't that part of what church is? I come here to be fed, to be cared for. And isn't that legitimate? That's where some of that is coming from, right? So it's some of that deeper stuff that's there. This is where it shows up in other places, and I don't imagine, well, you're O and A, so I won't even go into the social example I was going to use because it wouldn't play. It wouldn't play here. But when we are dealing with difference in a church, think about and push yourselves to think about what are the deeper things happening here. For example, in saying to someone, it sounds to me like you're obviously not in agreement that we should move forward with an elevator. Yeah. Okay, so we're at least doing a feasibility study. But what's interesting is that how things change when churches come together and have conversations only about, not about the topic, not about the elevator, when they have conversations about what has this church meant to you personally? Why are you here? What does it mean? What does it teach you? What does it give you? How does it feed you? And having table conversations about that makes a huge difference, actually, in going forward. Because then you know what the deepest things are, and you can connect. You can say, you know what? I remember you said at dinner that you really value XYZ. I see what we're doing as a way to bring XYZ more into the forefront, or something like that. Okay? So the more you get to know deeply where each other is, the more you can address things that are keeping you apart. I'm assuming that, and Fa can correct me if I'm wrong, I'm assuming that most of the conversations that you're going to be having with people who disagree with you may happen by accident. You're not necessarily seeking out people who overtly disagree with you, because you probably aren't. Am I right? Do you turn around when you see a red hat? No, I'm serious. A lot of us are avoiding these things, right? It's a lot easier. I had a friend walked into a shop. The guy looked up and said, "Hey, how you doing? I'm doing," and made a comment about blah, 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 Trump. And the guy turned around and left. My friend just walked out. He's like, I can't deal with it. Can't even hear it. So unless we're really intentional about having some difficult conversations, we're probably not going to be entering into them. So we have to start small. So if we can start small in the church with some of the things you mentioned, that's a way to start. Or in our families, although that's a whole nother, that can be a whole nother thing. If you're looking to be a place where you can host conversations for the community, if you're that brave, because that's what it requires, if you're that brave, then there is a organization that can help. It's called Braver Angels, and David Brooks does talk about them. And they have all the trainings and so forth designed to help create that kind of space in a town or in a village. But it is really hard work, and it has to be intentional. And if you want to be that and you want to do that, I think that's fantastic, because churches are not doing that. They're not doing that. Very few people are doing it at all. So what are some other ways that we can bridge some of those divides? Lately, this is how I see myself. I'm in a city, and overhead, from the tops of all the skyscrapers, there is aerial combat going on. Over my head, everywhere. And I am furtively walking down the street, from one street to the next, around the block, going from one place to another. Just, that's how I see myself. And I'm avoiding what's going on overhead. Do any of you feel like that? So then the question becomes for us, do we want to engage? Will it make any difference if we do? Are we willing to take the risk? And where can we do it in a way that might actually make a difference? That's a question. So what do you think?
Question.
Yes.
If we see one of these difficult conversations being inevitable, what can we do to sideline it or to keep ourselves from getting engaged in it? Because we know there is no way we will be heard or listened to. I don't care if anybody disagrees with me, but at least hear what I have to say. And what if we know that
That's
never
not gonna happen.
How do we break it off right in the beginning and just say, no, I'm not gonna have that conversation?
Do you have the
Especially
freedom
if
to,
we've already tried to do it that way 2 days earlier.
do you have the freedom or the ability to get up and walk away?
Yes, I would have.
That's the best way to do it.
And just say, I can't have this conversation with you, and just get up and walk away.
You can say, I'm sorry, I can't have it. If the person says, why not? How would you respond? Why not? Why can't you talk about this with me?
Well, in this case, we clearly see things differently, and we have a very difficult time just stopping and listening to each other, and generally having a conversation, which implies that two people are listening and
Well, if you just listen to what I said,
because you're crazy. That do it?
one of the best things to do is to role play. Get somebody to role play with you. And have them be that aggressive. If that's how the person behaves, have them do that. And then you can decide, okay, if this happens, boom, that's when I get up and walk out. And see. I'm always in favor of, if it's inevitable, to try again. But you learn when it's not ever going to work. And if it's not, then don't get yourself hurt by staying. Other comments, questions? I see the time is 8 o'clock. Martha.
I was at the gym yesterday at the JCC, and someone came in singing the praises of Trump, and I started saying, she was saying, don't you agree with me? And I said, I have a different opinion than you, but I'm happy to talk about something else. And I don't know what.
And what happened?
And she said, she smiled, and that was it. But I mean, I felt okay about that, but then I thought, what if I was able to convince her maybe that some of her ideas are directly out of the newscast? Arguments are come directly from a Trump speech.
Well, here's the thing. There is no convincing, right? Just as you couldn't be convinced, we probably couldn't be convinced to think differently than we do. So the convincing is not, and that's not our job. We're not responsible for the way another person thinks. We're really not.
Well, I felt good enough that she smiled and
Yes.
said goodbye. I mean, I'll see her again at the gym.
Yeah.
But there was a little twinge of sadness that I couldn't have
Yes.
convinced her.
No.
But you can't. And your job is to do exactly what you did. I mean, you were Christ's love to her. You said, I have a different opinion, but I'd be happy to talk about something else. I mean, that's love. You didn't reject her. You didn't turn away and not talk to her, which some people would have. Yeah, you did the right thing, I think. Absolutely.
I think we've circled around tonight, which is compromise. And that seems to have become such a dirty word.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
You know, if you've compromised, you would have left your money on the table.
You've sold out.
kind of thing. And, you know, when did we get this specific about everything? And that's a shame.
Yes, it is. It is a shame. And it's particularly a shame in the government because we did used to compromise. We used to compromise. Yeah, and cross-fertilize and, yeah.
There's too much of, I'm gonna fight with you, and if you don't come to my way of thinking, you're really my enemy forever.
Yeah, and we do have a cancel culture, and it goes both ways.
But I think we are also in some very tenuous times because
Yeah, I saw that this morning.
You know, but it's like there's this rage, or there's no concept that, you know, even, you know, how many young teenagers, you know, when you see these babies that are gonna go to jail because they got mad at somebody, so they shot them and killed them. I mean, so we're not I'm struggling with my words tonight. But our first response is, well, I'll just take care of it, in the wrong way, because.
That's our reactivity.
Because we haven't, you know, our children and some of our adults, we're not being taught, or we're not learning the skills that we need to behave like people.
Well, and we're not learning
How to.
that space between action and reaction, which is where free will lies. So that if I shove you, you have a choice. You can either react and do something back to me, or you can wait. And that's that space between action and reaction, and then decide what you do or don't do. And that widening that space right now is one of the most difficult things.
It's very frightening too.
It's very frightening because it's we have this. That's it sounds like a shotgun. That's our Arnold Schwarzenegger. I mean, that's how our society seems to be reacting right now.
And do you wanna step in, and do you wanna, you know, do you wanna take action, or, you know, try to resolve, or try to whatever, you know, and there's a fear of, you know, don't watch what you say, because
You get shot.
you're gonna get shot, or you're gonna get
Yep.
killed, or you're gonna, you know,
Yep.
Is part of this on like an individual basis, where a person doesn't want to lose, they want to win, they always want to win?
Well, there is some of that because it's status seeking, which may be the win-lose thing. So if you think about it in terms of status, that we're always seeking status. And men seek status in different ways than women do. I mean, we both seek status. Men's is more recognizable. Women's tends to be kind of going around in sometimes really vicious ways to get status. Men tend to be really upfront, just gonna right in your face, you know, that kind of thing. So yeah, it's status, and that's part of what drives it. But it's the fact that it's an ethos in the entire culture means that it's the action of a large group of individuals, right? So it's not only individuals, because that's what it's always been. There have always been individuals who were problematic. And now it's like and the pandemic didn't help with any of this, right? Fi, I see you.
I also wanted to say that I had a conversation with someone who I'm pretty sure we're on different places in the political process, which is fine. We were having a wonderful conversation. And we both agreed that, you know, we could just hold our own opinion. We were talking about voting. And, you know, we could have our opinion and go vote, and let's go have ice cream or a beer or whatever. Like, we don't have to be enemies because we vote differently.
to solve so much more over ice cream.
Now, see, the challenge with that is, and I've heard this a lot, especially coming out of the national siting of the UCC, is that for some people, there is no such thing as we can agree to disagree. Like, that's a phrase I don't use it anymore. Because for some people, what you're agreeing to disagree about is how you perceive my humanity. That's problematic. And that's a place where those conversations probably should not be happening. Now, we have somebody in our conference who is a queer woman who regularly is in conversation with a faithful and welcoming pastor, and very fruitful, very loving friendship and so forth. It's exceptional. It's really hard to do. And there's certain people who can do that and can lead the way in some of those things. A lot of people cannot do that, and that's okay. You know, there are people who are gifted for crossing divides that way and holding space. But I don't want to keep you longer. I don't even know if this has been helpful, but at least it's a good conversation.
And now could we vote on the elevator? I think.
I want to vote on the painting, okay? I want to know where the painting is. It's in the elevator.
Yeah, what happened to the painting?
They will hang it somewhere else. That is the plan, yes.
It's also ADA bathrooms too, so.
Yeah, well, who cares about federal law? I mean, come on. Doesn't affect me.
Isn't that controlling us?
Exactly.
Circle back to the beginning.
Exactly.
We've had some really good conversations here, and that's really been part of our ethos, if you will, is to open up opportunities for everybody to have a chance to weigh in. And I think that's been to our favor in the community togetherness of our church.
I'd like for us to sing one verse of I'm Gonna Live So God Can Use Me. That's in the prayer, sing prayer and praise.
Yeah, 139, sing prayer and praise.
You may know this one, and we're just gonna sing, I'm gonna live so God can use me. And then we'll have a prayer and then a final one verse of Let's Be the Tithe Funds. Okay? Pray with me. My siblings in Christ, we come together in prayer. We come to be with one another, to listen, to noodle on things. We come together to be able to give up hardness. Lord, be with us in our journey. Help us to continue to grow. Help us to not say we have to agree to disagree, but maybe we have to agree to continue to grow and to find those edges a little more soft so that we can grow. And may we remember the way that Christ would have us behave, the way that Christ would have us interact with one another with respect as he did, with kindness and generosity as he did. Be with us this night as we go into our homes, and then tomorrow as we reach out to the world again in your name. Be within us, Lord. Be the peace within us that we need for these days. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Join me in one verse. Blessed be the time. I don't know about you, but we used to always stand up and hold hands. So if you want to do that, I would invite you.
Thank you, Ann. Thank you, Chris.
Sure, thank you.